Welcome back to Rich Rodriguez Season by Season. The Mountaineers were on cloud 9 going into 2006, coming off a Sugar Bowl win that garnered some national expectations and some respect for the new look Big East. And the good news for West Virginia fans, most of the Mountaineers' offensive playmakers were coming back. Expectations were high for the 2006 Mountaineers, so much so that Pat White, Steve Slayton, and Owen Schmidt graced the cover of Sports Illustrated. The main issue that Rich Rodriguez and staff faced was depth at quarterback, but there were still solid answers there. Martinsburg native Nate Sowers and Jarrett Brown were among the two top competitors, but like in 05, there was still a youth question.
We got to have either Nate Sowers or Jarrett Brown. Got to keep getting better, and I think they're a lot sharper now than they were in the spring. They did a good job this summer thinking about it, but you know their heads are going to start to swim as we install our offense.
With so many returning starters, the Mountaineers were picked to finish first in the Big East preseason media poll. Louisville and Pitt followed at 2 and 3. Rutgers and South Florida at 4 and 5, with UConn, Cincinnati, and Syracuse bringing up the rear. WVU also garnered some serious national expectations from AP voters as well. The Mountaineers were picked to finish 5th in the AP Top 25, its highest ranking in program history up to that point. West Virginia's national title hype blended well with the media attention coming from their first opponent. For only the second time in 83 years, Marshall would appear on WVU's schedule, and it was a program that had been clamoring for the Mountaineers for years. Plenty of pomp and circumstance preceded the Friends of Coal Bowl, but when it came down to it, it was just your average season opener for a top 5 football team. Pat White had a quiet day on the ground, but used his frequent flyer points, tossing for 168 yards and 2 touchdowns to Brandon Miles. The defense showed out too, containing future Super Bowl champion Ahmad Bradshaw and picking off Herd QB Bernard Morris. But the story was Steve Slayton, who pretty much picked up right where he left off in the Sugar Bowl, rushing for over 200 yards and adding 2 touchdowns in the 42-10 beatdown.
I think I did well. I mean, just following the offensive line, I think we had a good game plan coming in, and we just executed well. I think I can sustain for 12 games, and I feel good. I mean, I don't even feel like I had 21 carries.
You are now officially the winners of the first Coal Bowl.
That's it.
Everybody got in on the party the next week against Eastern Washington. 3 touchdowns on the first 3 possessions is all Rich Rodriguez needed to see from the starters, so it came down to the reserves. Jarrett Brown passed for 129 yards and a touchdown and added 1 more score on the ground, just one of 80 players who took the field for WVU in the 52-3 blowout.
Pat, they're excited. He want to see me do good. He cheered me on a lot. Well, everybody cheered me on a lot. It's good hearing it from Pat and Adam because they're veterans and they're in my position.
With those 2 fairly simple games out of the way, a tougher portion of the non-conference stretch was looming ahead. Before 2 trips down south, the Mountaineers would face off against their old September nemesis, the Maryland Terrapins. The Terps were usually a tough test for West Virginia, but before the end of the first quarter, Maryland would be served up on the half shell. Steve Slayton opened up things for WVU with a 38-yard scamper down the sidelines to put the old gold and blue on the board first. Then a Maryland miscue on a punt gave Pat White fantastic field position at the 11-yard line to connect with Darius Raynaud. 14-0 less than 5 minutes in. Slayton would be the engine with 195 total yards and 2 touchdowns and a 45-24 win over the Terps.
I mean, it felt great. I mean, every win is just a great feeling, and it's just a big positive. It's supposed to be a big test, and I think we did well.
Nighttime and West Virginia football has been pretty special in the last several years, and I even tried to break out the 1984 Penn State-West Virginia game. Wasn't that the first night game? So I actually could show my play, and I couldn't find the tape anywhere. So.
All those dominant Slayton games made him the prime target for East Carolina defenders the next week. The sophomore running back was bottled up for just 80 yards on 24 carries, so the Mountaineers had to go to the air. Pat White delivered a mixed performance, completing 17 of 24 passes for 216 yards and 2 scores, but was picked off 3 times.
Yeah, Pat was very comfortable. I mean, he's been throwing the ball very well. I just saw we threw it 24 times. That's a lot for us, and you know, he was making good decisions for the most part.
It was definitely a good thing for this ball team. Didn't play well, had a lot of mistakes, but I mean, it's a win.
The WVU defense contained the Pirate rush to only 41 yards and wreaked enough havoc to keep James Pickney from finding his receivers very often in a 27-10 win. Now, it was a trip to SEC country.
You know, offensively, West Virginia's got a couple of guys, Pat White and Steve Slayton, that are just outstanding speed. looked at them extensively. They run the option, which is a little bit different than what we normally see, and they run it to perfection.
Yeah, Saturday we had practice with some big cowbells, bringing them, and probably going to break them out again a little bit tomorrow and on Thursday as well.
The cowbells bothered the Mountaineers for much of their visit to Mississippi State. 11 penalties totaling 134 yards kept Rich Rodriguez fuming. The law firm of Slayton, White, and Schmidt prosecuted the Bulldogs' defense, though. Steve Slayton got back on track with 185 total yards, and Pat White and Owen Schmidt each found the end zone twice in a 42-14 win to close out non-conference play.
All you could be after 5 games is 5-0, and we're 5-0 against some different teams in different conferences. And now we get ready to finally come back home and start Big East play.
As Coach Rod said, 5-0 going into Big East play, just like everyone expected. But no one quite expected the clip that Steve Slayton would be performing early on in the year. So the question had to be asked, was his play Heisman worthy?
Where's the need for a campaign? It's not like we're going out soliciting votes and you have to explain your platform. In this day and age in Division I football, just about every game's on TV, and if you're ranked high enough and you got a good enough team, all your highlights are shown anyway. So if a guy's good enough, everybody will know about it, I promise you.
For the first time all season, Slayton and the Mountaineers would start off in a hole. On its opening drive, Syracuse managed to move the ball efficiently enough to get on the board first. That's when Pat White woke up the Milan Pushkar Stadium crowd. On WVU's 4th play from scrimmage, he took off for a 69-yard touchdown run. After a Pat McAfee field goal, Slayton got in on the party, scoring from 52 yards away to put WVU up 17-7. The Orange responded before the half to cut WVU's lead to 3, but the Mountaineers exploded from there. White finished with a Big East quarterback record, 247 rushing yards, and 4 touchdowns to lead West Virginia to a 41-17 win over Syracuse.
The WVU coaching staff clearly saw something on film that would allow White to have so much success. In fact, Coach Rod says he scored 3 touchdowns on the same play.
One play in particular, kind of a counter quarterback that I think he scored 3 times on that play alone, and we had only run it 1 time all year. So it was a nice performance by him.
We ran a play that Pat scored on earlier in the game, and that was pretty much where he just blew up, was on that one, the one play. We ran it about 5-6 times this game, and those were his long runs.
The next week against Connecticut, Pat White showed up again. With WVU up 6-3 in the second quarter, number 5 broke away for a 45-yard touchdown run to put the Mountaineers up 10. Then on WVU's next possession, he took off for another big 30-yard gainer to set up a 20-3 halftime lead. Then he took to the air, finding Rayshawn Bolden from 52 yards out to send the Huskies to the pound in a 37-11 win, WVU's program record 14th straight. At 7-0, the Mountaineers were inching closer to the top of the college football world. Entering November, WVU stood at 3rd in the BCS standings. With Ohio State and Michigan above them, the path to a national championship was clear, but not easy. The next game on the slate was against 5th-ranked Louisville. After the classic 2005 battle with U of L, ESPN took note and put that game on a Thursday night. West Virginia entered New Cardinals Stadium in front of a blacked-out crowd and a Louisville squad that was hungry for some payback. At the time, it was the most-watched weekday college football game in the history of ESPN. It was an electric night on the banks of the Ohio, and Steve Slayton fed off that energy early. He found some wide-open space for a 42-yard touchdown run to put the old gold and blue in the end zone first. Down 7-6, Louisville's Brian Brom woke up. His 40-yard bomb to Harry Douglas set up a 10-yard rushing score, but Pat White answered back. He found Darius Reynaud downfield to get in U of L territory, then took it in himself for a 14-13 lead. The bottom fell out for West Virginia in the third quarter, though. Trailing 16-14, Steve Slayton fumbled at WVU's own 15-yard line, and Louisville's Malik Jackson took it in for a touchdown. Then a 61-yard punt return put Louisville up 30-14, and the Mountaineers just couldn't make up that ground in a 44-34 loss.
It's a loss. The sun will come up eventually. We got a lot of football left. They still got a lot of goals out there, and still can compete for a Big East championship and a lot of other good things out there.
We do have a chance of doing a great thing here. We can still have a great season, go off on a great note. I mean, even though we lost one game, we can still go out with only one loss.
So the national title hopes for West Virginia were out the window, but there was still plenty to play for. The Big East Championship was still within reach, and all of West Virginia's remaining games were either in Morgantown or just up the road on I-79. Steve Slayton would put a hurting on Cincinnati when the Mountaineers returned to Milan Puskar Stadium. The Heisman candidate would have his longest career rush on that afternoon, rumbling 65 yards on a second quarter touchdown. He'd finish with 148 yards, and Pat White would add over 90 both in the air and on the ground to lead the Mountaineers to a 42-24 win over the Bearcats.
Well, I thought our guys played really hard. I thought, we executed pretty well at times offensively. We had a few busts, and there were some things we left out there. I thought our defense was a lot more aggressive.
Pat and Steve would bring their A game to the Steel City a week later for the backyard brawl. Slayton became the first Mountaineer to rush and receive for over 100 yards in a game, totaling 345 all-purpose yards and 4 touchdowns against the Panthers. In between mocking the Heinz Field's in-stadium growl, White managed 220 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns of his own, and West Virginia took care of business against Pitt 45-27.
I think so. I mean, I don't think any of the guys is a threat like us and take a distance on any play.
The West Virginia defense started strong against South Florida on Thanksgiving weekend. Eric Wicks and Quentin Andrews picked off Matt Grothy passes in the first half, but the Mountaineer offense couldn't cash in either time. In fact, Pat McAfee had WVU's only points on the board through most of that first half. The Bulls found the end zone first, doing what they'd eventually do all game, stuffing the sophomore stars. USF took the lead on a Pat White fumble that was returned for a touchdown. They'd add another score to take a 14-6 lead into the locker room. Number 5 would start to mount a comeback for WVU, passing 2 touchdown passes to Brandon Miles to cut the game to within 5 in the fourth quarter. But a late interception sealed it for the Bulls in a 24-19 upset.
We need to refocus. We got one more game, and it's going to be a nationally ranked team coming in here, and we'll find out a lot about our team in this next week. Everybody's on a kind of a one-week job interview.
The next week would be among the most challenging for Rich Rodriguez as the head coach of West Virginia. Pat White left the South Florida game hobbled and questionable for the regular season finale, and that game was no cupcake. Rutgers was coming to Milan Puskar Stadium with a Big East title and a BCS bowl berth on the line. A classic Morgantown nighttime atmosphere would greet the nationally ranked Scarlet Knights, but West Virginia struggled in the first 30 minutes without Pat White. A pair of Pat McAfee field goals were the only points WVU had put on the board in the first half, down 10-6. The defenses of both teams managed to neutralize WVU's Steve Slayton and Rutgers running back Ray Rice, so it fell upon the quarterbacks to get it done. Jarrett Brown put WVU in the end zone on back-to-back possessions, first on a deep ball to Brandon Miles, who set up a 1-yard Slayton run. Then the backup QB did a little running of his own. After a pump fake, he found some open space and got a key block from Steve Slayton to put the Mountaineers up 10. Rutgers would score 13 straight points, though, to take a 23-20 lead with under 4 minutes to play. But Brown would come up clutch. He found Darius Raynaud and Darrell Jalla to put Pat McAfee in chip shot range, and the future ESPN personality delivered. Both teams headed to overtime tied at 23. In the first 2 overtimes, both teams traded field goals, then traded 1-yard rushing scores. So 33-33 going into overtime number 3. On the second play of WVU's possession, Brown scrambled and found a leaping Brandon Miles to put the Mountaineers ahead. Just like the previous season against Louisville, Jala delivered a 2-point conversion to give WVU an 8-point advantage. Ray Rice gave the Scarlet Knights one last chance to tie by pushing a pile of bodies into the end zone, but on the 2-point conversion attempt, Mike Teal's pass was batted away by Vaughn Rivers, and WVU came up with another classic, a 41-39 triple overtime win over Rutgers.
They go down as the winningest senior class in school history. They will also become the first class to play in 5 bowl games.
I know it's hard to believe. It's been a great and successful career. The body's starting to get worn down a little bit, so it's a good way to come out with a game like this.
It was pretty emotional. I mean, like just all the things we've been through, and just thinking about all that. I mean, just how the program turned around from when we got here and now how it is now.
West Virginia managed to pull it off. A 10-win season for the second straight year, the first time in program history that had ever been done. Dan Moses and Steve Slayton finished the season as consensus All-Americans, with Moses being awarded the Remington Trophy as the nation's best center and Slayton finishing fourth in Heisman voting. Now, for the third time in 4 seasons, it was off to the Gator Bowl to take on Georgia Tech and their highly potent offense led by Calvin Johnson. Megatron would power the rambling wreck early on. The future NFL Hall of Famer caught 2 long bombs to help Georgia Tech to a 35-17 lead early in the third quarter. The outlook was bleak since Steve Slayton had pulled himself out due to a thigh injury, but Pat White made up the difference. He first went to the air to find Tito Gonzalez, who booked it 58 yards to the end zone to cut Tech's lead to 11. On WVU's next possession, White passed 3 times, including a 14-yarder to Brandon Miles, cut the deficit to 35-31. GT then bobbled the ensuing kickoff deep in their own territory, and Pat used his legs to run 15 yards and give West Virginia a 38-35 lead. 21 points in just 7 minutes. Georgia Tech's final threat in the fourth was thwarted by Quentin Andrews, and for the first time in program history, WVU won the Gator Bowl 38-35. And with that, attention turned to 2007. The young stars on this team were reaching maturity, and they already had 22 wins and 2 bowl victories under their belt. The future looked bright, and many Mountaineer fans believed bigger wins loomed ahead.
You know, we've done some pretty good things over the last, 5 years or so, and we're not done yet. I think we can continue to grow this program and to be the best program in the country.